the quiet hum of dissatisfaction, the persistent whisper of a life unlived. These are universal signals that often precede a profound journey of self-transformation. We all encounter moments when the familiar structures of our identity, our habits, or our perspectives begin to feel constricting, even painful. Modern psychology identifies this as cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced by a person who holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values, or is confronted by new information that conflicts with existing beliefs, ideas, or values. Spiritually, this same experience is often described as the dark night of the soul, or a period of spiritual aridity, a necessary stripping away of the old self to make way for a deeper truth. From the neuroscientist observing altered brain states to the mystic describing profound shifts in consciousness, the human capacity for radical change is one of our most compelling and mysterious endowments. This essay embarks on an integrated exploration of self-transformation, weaving together the rigorous insights of psychology with the timeless wisdom of spiritual traditions. We will move beyond superficial self-help narratives to delve into the fundamental mechanisms, both internal and external, that facilitate profound personal evolution. Our central thesis is that genuine self-transformation is not merely an act of willpower or a superficial adjustment, but a holistic process requiring both the psychological work of healing, understanding and integration, and the spiritual journey of awakening, surrender and meaning-making. By examining how these two powerful lenses illuminate and complement each other, we can cultivate a more complete and sustainable path toward becoming our truest selves. From a psychological perspective, we will navigate the intricate landscape of identity formation, exploring how our early experiences and attachment patterns shape our sense of self and our capacity for change. We will delve into cognitive behavioral theories, examining how our thought processes, beliefs, and learned behaviors can either imprison us or liberate us. Neuroscience will offer insights into neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, and how intentional practices can literally reshape our neural architecture. Furthermore, we will consider the role of trauma in hindering transformation and the psychological pathways to healing and post-traumatic growth, emphasizing concepts like self-efficacy, agency, and the development of a growth mindset. Complementing these psychological frameworks, we will draw from a rich tapestry of spiritual traditions that have, for millennia, offered profound wisdom on the nature of the self and the path to liberation. Buddhist teachings on impermanence, anicca, non-self, anatta, and the cessation of suffering, dukkha, provide a framework for understanding the fluid nature of identity and the release from attachment. Christian contemplative traditions, through concepts like metanoia, a radical change of mind or heart, and kenosis, self-emptying, offer pathways for surrendering the ego and opening to divine grace. Islamic and Sufi mysticism will introduce us to the purification of the nafs, ego self, and the transformative journey of fana, annihilation of the self, towards divine union. Hindu and Vedantic philosophy will illuminate the illusory nature of Maya and the pursuit of self-realization, Atman Brahman. Existential philosophy will challenge us to confront our freedom, responsibility, and the inherent meaninglessness or meaning-making of existence, fostering authenticity. We will also touch upon indigenous wisdom, which emphasizes rites of passage, connection to nature, and ancestral guidance as pathways to profound identity shifts. The integration of these perspectives is not about reducing spiritual experience to mere psychological phenomena, nor about dismissing psychological insights as purely material. Instead, it is about recognizing their profound synergy. Psychology provides the maps of the mind, helping us understand the quote one of change, how habits are formed, how emotions are regulated, how internal conflicts arise. Spirituality offers the compass of the soul, guiding us toward the quote two and quote three, the purpose of our existence, the nature of ultimate reality, and the deepest longing for connection and wholeness. Together, they offer a comprehensive understanding that allows for both therapeutic healing and spiritual awakening, honoring the full spectrum of human experience. Over the course of this exploration, we will first lay a comprehensive psychological and spiritual framework for understanding transformation, detailing the core theories and wisdom traditions. Subsequently, we will examine how these processes manifest in our modern world, addressing contemporary challenges and opportunities for change. We will then bring these concepts to life through illustrative examples and compelling case studies, drawing from both historical spiritual figures and contemporary psychological research. Finally, we will delve into practical integration, offering actionable psychological interventions and spiritual practices that can be woven into daily life, culminating in a synthesis that points towards a unified vision of self-transformation, a journey of both healing and awakening. This journey invites us to engage not just intellectually, but also contemplatively. It asks us to reflect on our own experiences of change, our resistances, and our deepest aspirations. By holding both the scientific and the sacred in our awareness, we can approach self-transformation with greater wisdom, compassion, and efficacy, ultimately fostering not just personal growth, but a more conscious and integrated way of being in the world. We embark upon this journey of self-transformation not as an abstract exercise, but as an intimate exploration of the very core of our being, the self. Yet, what precisely do we mean by quote for? Is it the sum of our experiences, the narrative we construct, the roles we play, or something far more profound and irreducible? To navigate the terrain of transformation, we must first understand the architecture of this complex and multifaceted entity that is simultaneously the subject, object, and agent of change. In our contemporary understanding, particularly within Western psychological frameworks, the quote 5 often coalesces around the concept of the ego. The ego, derived from the Latin for quote 6, represents the organized, realistic part of our personality that mediates between the desires of the id, the demands of the superego, and the constraints of external reality. It is the seat of our conscious identity, the locus of our personal history, our memories, our beliefs, and the collection of characteristics we present to the world. This ego self is a vital adaptive mechanism, enabling us to navigate social complexities, achieve goals, and maintain a sense of individuality. It is the architect of our persona, the storyteller of our personal mythology, and the manager of our daily existence. However, the very necessity of the ego self for navigating the world can inadvertently lead to its over-identification. We often become inextricably entangled with our roles, parent, professional partner, citizen, or with our past narratives, victim, survivor, success, failure. we adopt belief systems, internalize societal expectations, and construct elaborate defense mechanisms to protect this fragile constructed identity. This process, while seemingly functional, can lead to a state of fragmentation, where our authentic essence becomes obscured beneath layers of conditioning, societal imprints, and unexamined psychological patterns. The quote 7 we present to the world, and indeed to ourselves, becomes a carefully curated, often defensive construct, rather than a fluid expression of our deepest being. This fragmentation is often the unacknowledged source of the pervasive dissatisfaction we explored in Chapter 1. When our conscious identity, our ego self, becomes too rigid, too invested in external validation, or too burdened by unhealed wounds, a subtle but profound dissonance arises. We experience a sense of alienation, a feeling that something essential is missing, or that we are living a life not entirely our own. This inner discord is not merely a psychological discomfort, it is a fundamental call from the deeper strata of our being for integration, for authenticity, for wholeness. It is the soul's yearning to transcend the limitations of the conditioned ego and reconnect with its original unblemished essence. This brings us to a crucial distinction: the difference between the ego self and the essential self, or what many spiritual traditions refer to as the true self. While the ego self is a psychological construct, formed and shaped by experience and environment, the essential self is considered the unchanging intrinsic core of our being, a deeper, more expansive consciousness that underlies our individual personality. It is the source of our innate wisdom, our compassion, our creativity, and our capacity for unconditional love. It is the Atman of Vedantic philosophy, the Buddha nature in Mahayana Buddhism, the divine spark in Christian mysticism, or the inner light in Sufi traditions. This essential self is not something we create through effort. Rather, it is something we uncover or remember by shedding the layers that obscure it. The journey of self-transformation, therefore, is fundamentally a journey of integration, an intricate dance between understanding and healing the ego self, and awakening to and embodying the essential self. Psychology provides us with the sophisticated tools and frameworks to meticulously map the inner landscape of the ego. It helps us decipher the genesis of our thought patterns, the roots of our emotional responses, the architecture of our defense mechanisms, and the impact of our personal history on our present reality. Through disciplines like psychodynamic therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, humanistic psychology, and trauma-informed approaches, we learn to recognize the limiting beliefs, the unhealed wounds, and the unconscious drives that shape our ego self. We gain insight into our identity formation, understanding how our sense of self has been molded by attachment styles, social conditioning, and personal narratives. This psychological work is not about annihilating the ego, for a healthy ego is indispensable for functional existence. Rather, it is about illuminating its mechanisms, healing its wounds, and liberating it from its self-imposed prisons. It is about fostering ego strength, adaptability, and self-awareness, allowing the ego to become a conscious instrument rather than an unconscious master. Simultaneously, spiritual traditions offer the profound wisdom and practices necessary to connect with the essential self. Where psychology often focuses on the structure and function of the individual mind, spirituality broadens our perspective to encompass the transcendent and the universal. It provides a framework for understanding our place within the cosmos, for discerning ultimate meaning and purpose, and for cultivating virtues that resonate with our deeper essence. Practices such as meditation, contemplative prayer, mindfulness, self-inquiry, and compassionate service are not merely techniques. They are pathways designed to quiet the incessant chatter of the ego mind, to dismantle our habitual identifications, and to open us to the experience of our boundless, interconnected nature. These practices cultivate an awareness that transcends the personal, revealing a self that is not merely individual, but also deeply interwoven with all existence. They offer a compass of the soul, guiding us toward realms of consciousness where egoic concerns diminish and a sense of unity, peace, and intrinsic worth prevails. It is critical to recognize that these two dimensions, the psychological and the spiritual, are not mutually exclusive or in competition. Rather, they are profoundly interdependent. One cannot truly access the essential self without first acknowledging and addressing the complexities of the ego self. Unexamined psychological wounds, unresolved traumas, and deeply ingrained limiting beliefs within the ego can act as formidable barriers, preventing authentic spiritual realization. Conversely, psychological healing often finds its deepest meaning and most enduring transformation when situated within a broader spiritual context that offers purpose, transcendence, and a connection to something greater than the individual self. To simply engage in spiritual practices without attending to psychological integration can lead to what is sometimes termed spiritual bypassing, an avoidance of difficult emotions and unresolved issues under the guise of spiritual enlightenment. Similarly, to focus solely on psychological healing without recognizing the inherent human longing for meaning and transcendence can leave one feeling perpetually unfulfilled, even after achieving significant psychological breakthroughs. Thus, the synergy we propose is not merely additive, it is integrative and transformative. We suggest that a truly holistic self-transformation requires both the meticulous work of psychological understanding and healing to refine and align the ego self, and the expansive journey of spiritual awakening to realize and embody the essential self. The former provides the stable, healthy vessel, the latter provides the profound wisdom and ultimate destination. Together, they enable us to move beyond mere adaptation or coping, towards a radical reimagining of who we are and what we are capable of becoming. In the chapters that follow, we will systematically unpack these interwoven dimensions. We will delve deeper into specific psychological frameworks, exploring how they illuminate the origins and mechanisms of the ego self, and offering pathways for its healing and integration. Concurrently, we will explore the profound insights offered by diverse spiritual traditions, revealing their shared wisdom regarding the nature of the essential self and the practices that facilitate its awakening. Our aim is to construct a comprehensive map that honors both the intricate workings of the human mind and the expansive potential of the human spirit, guiding us toward a more conscious, integrated, and authentically transformed way of being. We begin this detailed exploration by first understanding the very foundations of how our individual self comes into being. Having established the intricate interplay between the ego self and the essential self, and recognizing the transformative journey as an integration of these profound dimensions, we now turn our attention to the very foundational architecture of our conscious identity. Imagine your inner world as a complex structure. Before any meaningful renovation, a thorough understanding of its original blueprint and construction is paramount. We must first comprehend how its initial contours were formed, how the very bedrock was laid. This chapter embarks on that crucial architectural survey, exploring the developmental processes and myriad external influences that collaboratively construct the ego self. It aims to reveal the intricate tapestry woven from our earliest experiences, the pervasive threads of conditioning, and the powerful, often unconscious act of narrative construction. Through this detailed examination, we will uncover precisely how these formative elements coalesce to create the deeply ingrained maps of the mind, the personal atlases that guide our perception, dictate our behavior, and ultimately shape our fundamental sense of who we are in the world. From the very first breath, we are not merely individuals but beings immediately immersed in a complex web of relationships and environmental stimuli that begin to sculpt our nascent sense of self. The infant, a creature of utter dependence, embarks on the primal task of differentiating self from other, a distinction forged primarily through interactions with primary caregivers. This initial phase is profoundly significant, laying the very groundwork for our fundamental beliefs about safety, worthiness, and connection, the emotional concrete for our future self, attachment theory, a cornerstone. As we journey deeper into the intricate landscape of the ego self, having laid the foundational stones of early experience and attachment in the previous chapter, we now turn our gaze to the superstructure that rises upon them, the narrative self. This is not merely a collection of isolated beliefs or reactions, but a coherent, if often unconsciously constructed story we tell ourselves about who we are, who we have been, and who we might become. This narrative, woven from the threads of memory, interpretation, and aspiration, becomes the lens through which we perceive reality, shaping our identity and dictating our responses to the world. It is the silent, ever-present narrator of our own lives, filtering every incoming sensation and outgoing action through its established plot lines and character arcs. Without this internal story, our experiences would remain a chaotic jumble, devoid of meaning or direction. The narrative self provides that essential coherence, offering a sense of continuity even amidst life's inevitable disruptions and transformations. The nascent maps of the mind, initially sketched in the crucible of primary caregiver interactions, do not remain static. Rather, they are continuously elaborated, reinforced, and sometimes subtly redrawn throughout childhood, adolescence, and even into adulthood. Every significant interaction, every cultural message, every educational experience, and every societal expectation contributes to the intricate detailing of these maps. Imagine a cartographer meticulously adding geographical features, roads, and cities to an initially blank canvas. So too does our mind add layers of detail to its self-map. We internalize the norms, values, and judgments of our families, communities, and broader culture, adopting them as our own. A child growing up in a high-achieving family might internalize the belief that success equals worth, while another in a community emphasizing collective harmony might absorb the dictum that individual needs are secondary to group well-being. These external influences become internal architects shaping our understanding of success, failure, worthiness, and belonging. They dictate not just what we believe, but how we process information about ourselves and others. The ego self, therefore, is not a solitary creation, but a communal one, reflecting the myriad voices and perspectives that have echoed in our personal history, often without our conscious awareness of their profound impact. The gentle encouragement from a beloved teacher, the critical glance from a peer, the pervasive messages from media about ideal body types or career paths, all these contribute to the evolving blueprint of who we perceive ourselves to be. Central to this ongoing construction is the development of our narrative identity. We are, in essence, storytellers, constantly crafting and refining a personal saga that integrates our past experiences, present circumstances, and future projections into a cohesive whole. This narrative provides a sense of continuity and meaning, allowing us to navigate the complexities of existence by situating ourselves within a comprehensible framework. It's the mental biography we constantly update, a living document that explains why we are the way we are. I am the kind of person who always seeks justice, or I have always been someone who struggles with public speaking. These phrases are not just casual observations, they are fragments of the ongoing narrative we employ to define and stabilize our sense of self. They act as anchors, giving us a stable reference point in a fluid world, and often they guide our future decisions and interpretations. This story, however, is rarely a verbatim account of events. It is an interpretation, a selective curation, and often a rationalization, colored by our emotional states and underlying beliefs. We tend to highlight certain memories, downplay others, and even subtly rewrite the plots of past events to fit the overarching theme of our chosen identity. The internal editor is always at work, ensuring the story makes sense, even if it means bending reality slightly to maintain consistency. From these narrative threads emerge our deeply ingrained internalized beliefs and cognitive schemas. Beliefs are the convictions we hold about ourselves. I am capable. I am unlovable. I am an imposter. About others. People are trustworthy. People will always disappoint me. Everyone is out for themselves. And about the world. Life is fair. The world is a dangerous place. Opportunities are scarce. These are not merely fleeting thoughts. They are deeply entrenched assumptions that operate largely beneath the surface of conscious awareness, acting as powerful, often invisible filters for our experiences. They are the fundamental axioms of our personal universe. Cognitive schemas, a term popularized in cognitive psychology, refer to these organized patterns of thought and behavior that categorize and interpret information. Think of them as mental shortcuts or templates, intricately wired neural pathways that allow us to process vast amounts of data efficiently. But they also predispose us to perceive and react in specific, often predictable ways. If our foundational schema dictates that we are inherently flawed, we will likely interpret neutral feedback as pointed criticism and dismiss genuine praise as insincere or undeserved, perhaps even attributing it to pity or manipulation. The internal monologue might whisper, "They're just being nice. They don't really mean it," or "I must have fooled them." Consider the individual whose early experiences fostered a secure attachment style. Their schemas might include beliefs like, "I am worthy of love and connection," "Others are reliable and generally well-intentioned," and "The world is generally safe and full of opportunities." This individual is likely to approach relationships with openness, trust, and resilience. interpreting challenges as solvable problems or opportunities for growth rather than insurmountable obstacles. When faced with a setback, their inner narrative might reassure them, "This is tough, but I have the resources to handle it, and I can count on support if I need it." They recover more readily from setbacks, viewing them as temporary detours rather than definitive failures. Conversely, someone with an insecure attachment history might develop schemas such as, "I must earn love through constant effort. Others will inevitably abandon me or prove untrustworthy." Or, "The world is unpredictable and inherently threatening." These schemas will manifest in behaviors like excessive people-pleasing, a reluctance to express authentic needs, difficulty forming deep, trusting connections, or a constant state of hypervigilance, even in objectively safe environments. Their internal narrative might be fraught with anxieties. "If I show my true self, they will leave," or "I can't rely on anyone but myself." The narrative self in these instances becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, shaping actions and interpretations that continually reinforce the initial, often limiting beliefs. The power of these established schemas and internalized beliefs lies in their remarkable resistance to change. Our minds are inherently designed for efficiency and consistency. Once a framework is established, disrupting it requires significant mental and emotional effort. This phenomenon is vividly illustrated by confirmation bias, our innate tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses. If we believe we are fundamentally inadequate, we will selectively notice and recall instances that support this belief, perhaps remembering every minor mistake while overlooking every success. We might find ourselves unconsciously filtering conversations, hearing only the parts that validate our fear, while inadvertently tuning out reassurances. This cognitive shortcut, while saving mental energy and providing a comforting sense of predictability, can trap us in self-reinforcing loops, making it exceedingly difficult to perceive alternative realities or embrace new, more empowering perspectives. The comfort of the familiar, even if it is limiting, often outweighs the discomfort of challenging our long-held assumptions. Even when confronted with undeniable evidence that contradicts our established beliefs, we often experience cognitive dissonance, a state of profound psychological discomfort arising from holding two or more conflicting cognitions, beliefs, attitudes, values. This internal friction can be deeply unsettling, like a jarring chord played in the symphony of our self-perception. To alleviate this discomfort, we tend to engage in various elaborate strategies that protect our existing schemas rather than altering them. We might rationalize the discrepancy. It was just a fluke. Dismiss the contradictory information as unreliable. That study isn't credible. Or even distort our perception of the new data to fit our old framework. They only praised me because they felt sorry for me. For example, someone who prides themselves on being open-minded but is presented with a viewpoint drastically different from their own might dismiss the new perspective as ignorant or misguided, rather than engaging with it, thereby preserving their self-perception of open-mindedness, while simultaneously avoiding the discomfort of genuine intellectual challenge. The internal narrative might swiftly interject, "This person clearly doesn't understand the complexities," or "Their argument is flawed at its core," effectively shutting down any potential threat to the existing worldview. This powerful, almost primal drive for cognitive consistency underscores why transformation is not merely an intellectual exercise, but often a profound struggle against deeply entrenched mental habits and emotional attachments. Furthermore, these cognitive structures are not purely intellectual constructs. They are deeply interwoven with our emotional landscape and even our physiological responses. When a core belief is challenged, it can trigger intense emotional reactions, anxiety, anger, sadness, shame, fear, because it threatens the very fabric of our perceived identity. The mind interprets the challenge as an attack on the self, prompting a defensive cascade. Our bodies often react in concert, manifesting stress responses that further reinforce the difficulty of shifting our perspective. A schema like "the world is dangerous" might be accompanied by chronic muscle tension, heightened vigilance, a quickened heart rate, or a perpetually constricted breath, demonstrating the holistic nature of our internalized reality. The emotional charge associated with certain beliefs makes them particularly resilient, as confronting them can feel akin to confronting a deep-seated threat to our very survival and well-being. The thought of letting go of these established narratives, even if they are painful, can feel like stepping into an abyss uncertain and terrifying. The ego self, then, is a complex, multi-layered edifice built upon foundational experiences, elaborated through narrative construction, and solidified by internalized beliefs and cognitive schemas. It is a masterpiece of human adaptation, allowing us to navigate the world with a sense of identity, purpose, and relative predictability. Yet, it is also the primary source of our dissatisfaction when its maps no longer serve our deeper journey, or when its narratives restrict our potential, keeping us bound to old patterns and limiting beliefs. Understanding the intricate construction of this self, how its foundations are laid, how its stories are woven, and how its walls are reinforced by cognitive biases and emotional attachments, is not an end in itself. Rather, it is the indispensable prerequisite for the profound work that lies ahead. It is the first step in recognizing what needs to be transformed before we can even begin to explore how to deconstruct, heal, and ultimately transcend these self-imposed limitations, paving the way for the awakening of the essential self. Having charted the architecture of identity, we are now poised to explore the forces that compel this structure to change and the pathways through which genuine transformation can occur. Having mapped the intricate architecture of the ego self, revealing how our conscious identity is forged from early experiences and solidified into a compelling narrative, we now arrive at the precipice of true transformation. Chapter 4 illuminated the formidable resistance of this narrative self, sustained by cognitive schemas, confirmation bias, and the profound discomfort of cognitive dissonance. We understand now that merely desiring change is insufficient. The ego, a master architect of its own preservation, employs sophisticated defenses to maintain its established order. The crucial question then becomes, how do we begin to deconstruct this deeply entrenched edifice, to loosen the grip of the stories we tell ourselves, and to prepare the ground for a more authentic, integrated self? The initial, indeed foundational answer lies in the cultivation of awareness. This is not a passive knowing, but an active, discerning presence. A flashlight shone into the shadowed corners of our inner landscape. For too long, Many of us have lived as unwitting passengers within our own minds, allowing the automatic pilot of our narrative self to dictate our trajectory. Our thoughts, emotions, and reactions often function on a largely unconscious loop, replaying old scripts and reinforcing established patterns without our conscious assent. The first act of architectural revision is to step back, to observe, and to become intimately familiar with the very blueprint that governs our inner world. We begin by recognizing that our narrative self, while feeling utterly us, is largely a construct of mental processes, a stream of thoughts, sensations, and emotions that flow through us, rather than defining the totality of who we are. Through practices of mindfulness and present moment awareness, we cultivate the capacity to observe these internal phenomena without immediate entanglement. This is akin to stepping onto the bank of a river and watching the water flow by, rather than being swept away by its current. We learn to notice the thoughts as they arise, the judgments, the anxieties, the reminiscences, the plans, without identifying as them. We observe the emotions as they ripple through our physiology, the tension in the shoulders, the flutter in the chest, the warmth of joy, without becoming lost in their intensity. This observational stance is revolutionary because it creates a vital space between stimulus and response. Traditionally, our internalized beliefs and cognitive schemas operate with almost reflexive speed. A trigger, a critical comment, a perceived slight, a challenging situation, immediately activates a deeply ingrained belief. I am not good enough. I am unlovable. I must be perfect, which in turn generates a predictable emotional and behavioral response. Awareness interjects itself into this automatic chain. It allows us to pause, even for a fleeting moment, before the habitual reaction takes hold. In this pause, choice is born. We begin to understand that we are not merely the sum of our thoughts and feelings, but the awareness that perceives them. This distinction is subtle yet profound, shifting our identity from the content of our minds to the consciousness that observes that content. As we hone this capacity for mindful observation, we begin the crucial work of deconstructing the narrative. The narrative self, as explored in Chapter 4, is not a monolithic entity, but a tapestry woven from countless threads of internalized beliefs, core assumptions, and self-schemas. Awareness allows us to identify these individual threads. We start to ask, what specific beliefs are driving this particular emotion? What underlying assumption is fueling this recurring pattern of behavior? For instance, if we consistently find ourselves striving for external validation, awareness might reveal a deeper belief system that equates self-worth with external approval. If we frequently experience anxiety in social situations, we might uncover a schema that posits the world as an inherently critical or unsafe place. This process requires a form of internal thought detective work. It involves tracing the lineage of our reactions, moving from the surface level symptom to the root cause. When a feeling of inadequacy arises, we do not simply accept it. We inquire, what thought preceded this feeling? What story am I telling myself about this situation or myself? How does this story connect to older narratives about my capabilities or my value? This inquiry is not about judgment or self-blame, but about compassionate curiosity. We approach our inner workings as an anthropologist might approach a newly discovered culture, seeking to understand its customs, its myths, and its underlying logic. Within this investigative process, we inevitably encounter the subtle yet pervasive influence of cognitive distortions. These are the systematic errors in thinking that the ego employs to maintain its preferred narrative, even when that narrative is demonstrably unhelpful or untrue. They are the rhetorical devices of the self-preserving mind, twisting reality to fit pre-existing schemas and thereby reinforcing confirmation bias. Consider a few common distortions. Catastrophizing, blowing an event out of proportion, imagining the worst possible outcome. If I fail this, my entire career is over. Black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking. Viewing situations in extremes with no middle ground. If I'm not perfect, I'm a complete failure. Overgeneralization, drawing a sweeping conclusion based on a single event. I messed up once, so I always mess up. Personalization, taking responsibility for events that are outside one's control, or assuming others' actions are directed at oneself. My friend is quiet, so she must be mad at me. Mind reading, assuming we know what others are thinking without evidence. They probably think I'm incompetent. Emotional reasoning, believing something is true because we feel it strongly, regardless of evidence. I feel anxious, so there must be something dangerous happening. These distortions are not merely intellectual errors, they are deeply intertwined with our emotional landscape, acting as powerful amplifiers of our core beliefs. If our core belief is, I am unlovable, emotional reasoning might lead us to believe a casual comment from a loved one confirms this, even when evidence suggests otherwise. If our schema is, the world is dangerous, catastrophizing becomes a default mental habit, constantly scanning for threats and validating the underlying fear. Awareness allows us to catch these distortions in real time. We learn to identify the specific mental acrobatics our ego performs to keep its story intact. By naming them, we begin to disempower them. We recognize them as patterns of thought, not as infallible truths. Cultivating this discerning awareness is not without its challenges. The ego, accustomed to its reign, often resists this scrutiny. When we begin to observe our thoughts and beliefs, we may experience an initial surge of discomfort, anxiety, or even a heightened sense of internal chaos. This is precisely the manifestation of cognitive dissonance at play, the internal conflict arising when our observations challenge our deeply held beliefs. It can feel unsettling, as if the very ground beneath us is shifting. We might be confronted with uncomfortable truths about ourselves, our motivations, or the ways we have inadvertently sabotaged our own well-being. This discomfort, however, is not a sign to retreat. It is a vital signal that we are touching upon areas ripe for transformation. It is the friction necessary for growth, the energetic feedback indicating that the old structures are beginning to loosen. Embracing this discomfort with self-compassion is paramount. The journey of self-transformation is not one of self-flagellation or harsh judgment. Instead, it is an act of profound self-kindness, an acknowledgement that our patterns, however unhelpful, were often developed as protective mechanisms in earlier stages of life. We do not condemn the ego. We seek to understand it, to integrate its wisdom, and to gently guide it towards greater alignment with our essential self. When we encounter a particularly stubborn belief or a deeply ingrained distortion, we meet it not with anger, but with a gentle curiosity. Ah, There you are, old friend. What purpose have you served? What fear have you been trying to protect me from? This initial phase of cultivating awareness and identifying the components of our narrative self is akin to an architect conducting a thorough structural survey of an old building. Before any renovation can begin, we must understand the existing foundations, the load-bearing walls, the hidden weaknesses, and the areas of potential decay. We are not yet demolishing or rebuilding. We are simply seeing with unprecedented clarity what is already there. The persistent practice of awareness, therefore, is the first and most critical step in dismantling the self-imposed limitations that bind us. It is the act of reclaiming our agency, of moving from being a reactor to being a conscious participant in our own inner life. It sets the stage for the subsequent chapters, where we will explore specific methodologies for actively challenging these identified beliefs, healing past wounds, and intentionally constructing new, more empowering narratives that resonate with the expansive potential of our essential self. The blueprint is unveiled. The work of conscious recreation now awaits our deliberate intention. Having cultivated the capacity for awareness, having observed the intricate tapestry of our ego self's narratives, and identified the subtle, yet potent, threads of cognitive distortion, we arrive at a pivotal juncture. Awareness, while foundational, is but the initial illumination. It is the lamp that reveals the architecture of our inner world, exposing both its grandeur and its inherent flaws. Yet, merely seeing the blueprint is not enough to rebuild the structure. The true work of transformation now beckons us beyond passive observation into the realm of active engagement. The courageous process of challenging and ultimately releasing the limiting beliefs that have long defined the boundaries of our perceived reality. This transition from awareness to active deconstruction is where the thought detective must evolve into an architect of change. We move from merely identifying the narratives to systematically interrogating their validity, their origins, and their enduring utility. This is not a gentle inquiry, but often a profound excavation, demanding both intellectual rigor and emotional resilience. For to challenge a deeply held belief is, in essence, to challenge a piece of the self we have constructed, a piece that has often served a protective function, however maladaptive it may have become. The first phase of this active deconstruction involves a rigorous interrogation of our internal narratives, a process akin to Socratic questioning applied to the very bedrock of our identity. We must learn to ask, with genuine curiosity and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, is this belief truly factual or merely a deeply ingrained interpretation? Where is the empirical evidence that supports this conviction, and where might I find evidence to the contrary? What is the origin of this belief? Did it emerge from direct experience, or was it inherited, absorbed from family, culture, or past traumas? Who benefits from my continued adherence to this particular narrative, and more critically, who or what is diminished by it? This meticulous questioning begins to unravel the tightly woven fabric of our self-story. We discover that many of our truths are not immutable facts, but rather deeply habituated thought patterns, often internalized during formative periods when our cognitive faculties were less developed and our emotional vulnerabilities were at their peak. A childhood experience of rejection, for instance, might have solidified into an adult belief of inherent unworthiness. A traumatic event might have cemented a conviction that the world is inherently unsafe. By scrutinizing these beliefs, we begin to differentiate between the historical function they once served, perhaps to make sense of a chaotic world, to protect a fragile ego, or to maintain a sense of belonging, and their current impact, which often manifests as self-sabotage, anxiety, or arrested personal growth. This phase is rarely comfortable. Indeed, it actively engages the very cognitive dissonance we discussed previously. But now we are no longer merely observing its discomfort. We are leaning into it, using it as a catalyst for change. The mind, accustomed to its established schemas, resists disruption. It may present a torrent of rationalizations, fears, and doubts, attempting to pull us back into the familiar, albeit limiting comfort of our old stories. This internal resistance is a natural response to the perceived threat of identity dissolution. Here, self-compassion becomes not just a gentle balm, but a vital tool, allowing us to acknowledge the fear and pain without capitulating to them, creating a safe internal container for the unsettling experience of questioning our own fundamental assumptions. Following this rigorous interrogation, the second phase of deconstruction involves unearthing the roots of these beliefs. We delve into the psychological archaeology of our own minds, tracing the lineage of our limiting narratives back to their genesis. This often requires revisiting challenging childhood experiences, understanding the dynamics of primary caregiver relationships, acknowledging the influence of cultural conditioning, and recognizing the lasting imprints of traumatic events. We come to see that many of these beliefs, though now restrictive, were once highly adaptive mechanisms. They were strategies developed by a younger, more vulnerable self to navigate complex environments, to gain love or approval, to avoid pain, or simply to survive. For example, a child who consistently received attention only when performing perfectly might develop an adult belief that their worth is contingent upon external achievement. This belief, while perhaps fostering early success, can later lead to burnout, chronic anxiety, and a profound sense of emptiness when achievements inevitably fall short or cease to be the sole measure of self. Understanding this genesis is crucial. It allows us to view these beliefs not as inherent flaws, but as outdated coping mechanisms. We distinguish between understanding the origin of a belief and being defined by it. The former empowers us to release it. The latter keeps us tethered to its limitations. This insight brings both a sense of profound empathy for our past selves and a clear imperative for change in our present. As we shake the foundations of these deeply entrenched beliefs, an emotional landscape often emerges that demands our conscious attention. Limiting beliefs are rarely purely intellectual constructs. They are typically anchored by a complex web of emotions: fear, grief, anger, shame, sadness, anxiety. When the intellectual scaffolding of a belief is challenged, these stored emotions inevitably surface. A belief in one's unworthiness, for instance, might be inextricably linked to a deep-seated shame from a past failure, or a profound grief over unfulfilled potential. The necessity here is to allow these emotions to surface and to process them, rather than to suppress them. This is not about wallowing, but about experiencing, acknowledging, and ultimately releasing the emotional energy that has been bound up in these old narratives. This can manifest as tears, anger, a profound sense of sadness, or even physical sensations of release. It is a vulnerable and often intense period, requiring immense courage and a steadfast commitment to self-compassion. We hold space for the pain of shedding old identities, recognizing that letting go of what is familiar, even if it is harmful, can feel like a profound loss. This compassionate witnessing of our own emotional processes prevents us from re-traumatizing ourselves and facilitates genuine healing. Finally, we arrive at the third and most transformative phase, the act of releasing. This goes beyond intellectual understanding or emotional processing. It is a conscious, volitional choice to let go. It is the moment when we decide with conviction that a particular belief no longer serves our highest good, and we consciously disentangle ourselves from its grip. This is not always a dramatic, singular event. It can be a gradual, iterative process, like shedding layers of old skin or pruning dead branches from a tree to allow for new growth. We are, in essence, emptying a cup that has long been filled with stagnant water, creating space for fresh, life-giving sustenance. This act of releasing often ushers us into a liminal space, a kind of quote 69 quote, where the old narratives have dissolved, but the new ones have not yet fully formed. This can be disorienting, even frightening. The familiar landscape of our ego self's certainties gives way to an expanse of uncertainty. Yet this void is not emptiness in a destructive sense. It is a fertile ground, a sacred pause. It is the necessary clearing before new seeds can be sown, before new structures can be consciously and intentionally built. It is within this profound space of release that we begin to reclaim our inherent freedom, the freedom to choose who we are, rather than remaining bound by who we were told we should be, or who we once believed ourselves to be. The deconstruction of limiting beliefs, therefore, is not an act of destruction, but an essential act of clearing. It is the courageous work of dismantling the walls that have confined us, not to leave us exposed and vulnerable, but to allow us to perceive the boundless horizon of our true potential. This arduous but liberating process prepares the ground for the conscious recreation of self, for the deliberate cultivation of beliefs and narratives that align with our essential self, a journey we shall embark upon in the chapters to follow. For now we rest in the quiet power of release, having dared to look deeply, to question profoundly, and to let go with unwavering resolve. Having navigated the often disorienting terrain of deconstruction, a landscape of crumbling certainties and shifting foundations, having bravely challenged and released the limiting beliefs that once anchored our ego self in familiar yet constricting patterns, we arrive at a profound juncture, the liminal space. The journey through deconstruction itself was a tempestuous one, often feeling like a controlled demolition of one's own internal architecture. There were moments of stark realization, a deep ache as old identities, carefully constructed over decades, dissolved into dust. Quote 70. One might have whispered into the quiet of their own mind, only to find the answer echoing back. Quote 71. The initial shock gave way to a liberating lightness, a sense of shedding heavy, ill-fitting garments. But then came the vast, open expanse, the quiet after the storm, leaving us in this in-between state. This is not an empty void, a barren wasteland left by the demolition of old mental structures. Rather, it is a crucible of potential, a fertile ground awaiting conscious cultivation. Imagine standing on a freshly tilled field, the rich earth turned over, receptive, yet entirely unplanted. It hums with a latent energy, a silent promise of what could be. This is the interim, the sacred pause between what was and what is yet to become, where the very fabric of our subjective reality is momentarily suspended, pliable and receptive to new imprints. It feels like a deep breath held, a moment pregnant with possibility before the exhale of creation. Here, the work shifts dramatically from dismantling to designing, from deconstruction to deliberate recreation. The tools change, the wrecking ball is set aside, and in its place we pick up the drafting pen and the trowel. The true power of this liminal space lies in its demand for intentionality. It is a canvas wiped clean, but without a painter's deliberate hand, it risks being splattered with random marks or, worse, slowly recovered by the dust of old habits. Without conscious direction, the mind, ever seeking order, will inevitably revert to old patterns or construct new ones based on unconscious biases, societal conditioning, or residual fears. This uncertainty feels uncomfortable, the ego might whisper. Let's just go back to what we knew, even if it hurt. We might find ourselves unconsciously gravitating towards familiar narratives, even the ones we just spent so much energy dismantling, simply because they offer a semblance of structure. To merely clear the ground without planting new seeds is to invite weeds to reclaim the soil, choking out any nascent growth. Thus, the pivotal task before us is to become the architects of our inner world, to consciously choose the blueprints for our emergent self, ensuring that these new narratives are not merely superficial replacements, but are deeply aligned with the resonant truth of our essential self. This alignment is paramount, for it ensures that the transformation we undertake is not merely a cosmetic adjustment of the ego, a fresh coat of paint over a cracked foundation, but a profound repatterning that brings our outer expression into harmony with our inner essence, creating a structure that is both beautiful and structurally sound. The process of recreation begins with a profound act of visioning. It requires us to turn inward, beyond the clamour of external expectations and the echoes of past conditioning, to listen to the quiet wisdom of the essential self. This inner turning can feel like stepping into a hushed cathedral after leaving a bustling marketplace. The noise of societal pressures, you should be more successful, you need to fit in, don't rock the boat, fades into a distant hum. The echoes of past conditioning, you're not good enough, you'll always struggle, love is conditional, begin to lose their power. In this newfound stillness, we begin to perceive a deeper, more authentic voice. What values does this deeper self champion? Is it compassion, courage, creativity, integrity, or freedom? What qualities does it seek to embody? Perhaps it's resilience, joy, peace, or radical self-acceptance. What narratives resonate with its innate sense of wholeness, interconnectedness, and purpose? This is not a process of intellectual fabrication, where we rationally construct a new identity, but of intuitive discovery, a gentle unveiling of the authentic self that has always existed beneath the layers of constructed identity, like uncovering a masterpiece hidden beneath years of accumulated dust. We ask ourselves, with genuine curiosity and a sense of sacred inquiry, if the essential self were to articulate its most authentic expression in the world, What would that look like? What beliefs would it hold about its worth, its capabilities, its place in the grand tapestry of existence? The answers often arrive not as fully formed sentences, but as subtle feelings, a warmth in the chest, a quiet knowing, a sudden clarity that feels undeniably true. From this place of deep listening, we begin to articulate new narratives. These are not mere affirmations chanted mindlessly, empty words repeated without conviction, but deeply held convictions, lived truths that redefine our relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the world. They are the bedrock of our new internal architecture. Where once there might have been a pervasive belief in scarcity, quote 80, quote 81, we now consciously cultivate a narrative of abundance, recognizing the infinite resources both within and without. Where self-doubt once reigned, a constant critic whispering insecurities, we foster a conviction of inherent worthiness, understanding that our value is intrinsic, not earned. Where fear dictated our choices, paralyzing us or pushing us into comfort zones, we now choose courage and trust, stepping forward even when the path isn't perfectly clear. These new narratives are expansive, empowering, and life-affirming. They are crafted with precision and imbued with emotional resonance, for the mind responds most powerfully to stories that evoke feeling and meaning. We do not simply think a new belief, we endeavor to feel its truth, to embody its essence, to live as if it were already a foundational truth of our being. This is the art of sculpting consciousness, of consciously remapping the internal landscape of our identity, creating new neural pathways that lead directly to our desired state of being. Crucially, this process of conscious recreation is not merely a philosophical exercise. It is profoundly supported by the remarkable capacity of our brain known as neuroplasticity. For decades, scientific understanding of the brain held a largely static view, believing that its structure was fixed after early development, like a hardwired computer. The prevailing thought was, you are who you are, and that's that. However, modern neuroscience has unequivocally demonstrated that the brain is a dynamic, ever-changing organ, capable of reorganizing itself by forming new neural connections and pathways throughout life. This groundbreaking discovery revolutionized our understanding of human potential. Every thought we think, every emotion we feel, every experience we have leaves a subtle imprint, strengthening existing neural circuits or forging new ones. When we repeatedly engage in old thought patterns, perhaps ruminating on past failures or self-criticism, we reinforce those neural pathways, making it easier for the brain to default to them, carving deep grooves in the mental landscape. Conversely, when we consistently choose new thoughts, new perspectives, and new emotional responses, we begin to weaken the old pathways and strengthen the new, like rerouting a river's course. This understanding of neuroplasticity provides the scientific, quote, 83 to the spiritual, quote, 84 of self-transformation. It gives us a tangible, biological basis for the profound changes we seek to make. The liminal space, devoid of entrenched pathways, is precisely where the brain is most receptive to new patterning. It's like having a freshly ploughed field ready for new seeds, or an empty canvas awaiting its first strokes. By consciously and consistently directing our attention, our intention, and our emotional energy towards the new narratives aligned with our essential self, we are literally rewiring our brains. We are building new neural superhighways for compassion, resilience, creativity, and self-worth, making these states of being the default routes for our thoughts and feelings. Simultaneously, we are allowing the old, limiting and self-defeating pathways to wither from disuse, becoming overgrown and less accessible, losing their magnetic pull. This is the physiological basis of cognitive restructuring, where the sustained practice of cultivating empowering thoughts and beliefs gradually reshapes the very architecture of our mind. The brain, in its magnificent adaptability, begins to reflect the conscious choices we make, making it progressively easier to think, feel, and act in ways that are congruent with our desired self. We find ourselves effortlessly choosing kindness or bravely pursuing a dream, and it feels natural, not forced. Therefore, the cultivation of new beliefs is an active, iterative process, requiring consistent engagement and mindful attention. It involves 1. Conscious input, actively seeking out information, experiences, and environments that support the new narratives. This might mean choosing different media, consciously opting for podcasts or books that uplift and inform rather than depress or distract. It could involve engaging with different communities, seeking out individuals who embody the qualities we wish to cultivate, or immersing ourselves in new learning that expands our perspective. This isn't passive consumption. It's a deliberate curation of our mental diet, feeding our new self with nutrient-rich information. We might feel a subtle inner pull towards certain authors or teachers, a quiet recognition that their wisdom aligns with our emergent truth. 2. Repetitive practice. Just as a musician practices scales daily to master their instrument, we must practice our new ways of thinking. This means catching ourselves when old patterns emerge, when the familiar voice of self-doubt or cynicism tries to reclaim its territory. When that happens, we gently but firmly redirect our thoughts towards the chosen narrative. It's an internal dialogue. Quote 85, quote. It is the consistent repetition, the daily, moment-by-moment choice, not the intensity of a single instance, that creates lasting change. Each redirection is a tiny act of self-authorship, reinforcing the new neural pathways. 3. Emotional integration. The new beliefs must be felt, not just intellectualized. It's not enough to say, I am worthy. We must feel worthy. We engage in practices that evoke the emotions associated with our desired state. Gratitude for what is already present in our lives, excitement for what is becoming, a deep sense of peace in our inherent worth, or the expansive feeling of interconnectedness. This might involve visualization, where we vividly imagine ourselves living these new truths, feeling the joy, confidence, or serenity they bring. It could be through journaling, expressing these emotions in written form, or through mindfulness meditation, anchoring ourselves in the present moment where these feelings can be cultivated. 4. Behavioral alignment. The ultimate test of a new belief is its manifestation in action. Our beliefs shape our reality, and our actions solidify our beliefs. We begin to make choices and take steps that are consistent with our new self-concept, thereby reinforcing the neural pathways and embedding the belief into our lived experience. If we've cultivated a narrative of courage, we might take a small, brave step we previously avoided. If it's abundance, we might practice generosity. Each aligned action sends a powerful signal to our brain. This is real. This is who I am now. This creates a virtuous cycle, where belief informs action and action strengthens belief. This journey of recreation demands courage, the courage to step into the unknown, to trust in a self yet fully realized, and to patiently persist through the inevitable moments of doubt or regression. There will be days when the old narratives feel overwhelmingly strong, when the comfort of familiar limitations beckons. Maybe this is too hard, the weary mind might concede. Maybe I should just settle. But it is in these moments of challenge that our resolve is truly forged. It is a continuous dance between conscious design and compassionate self-observation, acknowledging that while the old ego self may occasionally resurface, its power diminishes with each conscious choice to align with the essential self. We are not merely replacing one set of beliefs with another. We are engaging in a profound metanoia, a fundamental shift in mind and heart, where our internal world is consciously shaped to reflect the highest truth of who we are. In this chapter, we have laid the groundwork for this conscious repatterning, understanding both its profound psychological imperative and its scientific underpinnings. The next phase of our journey will delve into the practical strategies for sustaining this recreation, for integrating these new narratives into the very fabric of our daily lives, and for embodying the transformed self in the world, allowing our deepest essence to shine through. The journey from the deconstruction of limiting narratives to the conscious recreation of an empowering self is, in essence, a profound act of psychological and spiritual alchemy. We have navigated the turbulent waters of introspection, confronted the entrenched architecture of the ego self, and ventured into the liminal void where old identities dissolve. From this fertile ground, we have begun to plant the seeds of new beliefs, nurturing them with intentionality and leveraging the remarkable capacity of neuroplasticity. Yet, the articulation of a new narrative, however deeply felt and intellectually understood, represents only the nascent stage of true transformation. The profound challenge, and indeed the ultimate reward, lies in moving beyond conceptualization to actualization, to fully embody the recreated self, integrating its essence into the very fabric of our daily existence. This chapter delves into the critical phase of embodiment, exploring the sustained practices required to solidify new patterns, the strategies for integrating these shifts into our lived experience, and the profound implications of walking through the world as our authentic, transformed self. We understand that transformation is not a singular event but an ongoing process, a continuous unfolding that demands vigilance, compassion, and unwavering commitment. The initial burst of inspiration that accompanies the conscious recreation of self can be potent, yet without sustained effort, the gravitational pull of old habits and familiar patterns can easily reassert itself. To prevent regression and ensure that the newly forged pathways become the default routes of our consciousness, we must cultivate practices of continuous presence and deliberate integration. First and foremost, the cultivation of awareness, initially deployed to observe and deconstruct the ego self, now becomes the vigilant guardian of our recreation. We maintain the space between stimulus and response, not merely to identify old patterns, but to consciously choose the new narrative in real time. This requires an active moment-to-moment engagement with our internal landscape, monitoring thoughts, feelings, and impulses for alignment with our desired self. When old limiting beliefs attempt to resurface, awareness allows us to intercept them, to acknowledge their presence without granting them authority, and to gently yet firmly redirect our focus toward the recreated truth. This is not about suppression, but about conscious redirection and reinforcement. Cognitive reinforcement. We continually choose thoughts that align with our new narrative. This extends beyond simple affirmations. It involves engaging in mental rehearsal, visualizing ourselves living from this new perspective, and consciously constructing internal dialogues that support our desired identity. Each time we affirm a new belief, we strengthen the neural pathways associated with it, gradually making it more accessible and automatic. Emotional integration. True embodiment requires more than intellectual assent. It demands emotional congruence. We actively cultivate the feelings associated with our recreated self. If we aim to embody courage, we practice feeling courageous in situations that evoke fear. If we strive for self-worth, we identify and embrace moments where we feel inherently valuable, allowing these emotions to permeate our being. This emotional repatterning is crucial, as emotions are powerful drivers of behavior and deep anchors for belief systems. Behavioral alignment. Perhaps the most critical aspect of sustaining recreation is the alignment of our actions with our new beliefs. It is one thing to think we are compassionate. It is another to act compassionately, especially when challenged. When our behaviors begin to reflect our recreated self, a powerful feedback loop is established. The principle of cognitive dissonance, previously a barrier to change, now becomes a catalyst for it. If we act in ways that are inconsistent with our old, limiting beliefs but consistent with our new, empowering ones, our minds will work to resolve this dissonance by solidifying the new beliefs. We literally act our way into a new way of thinking. This requires courage, for it often means stepping outside our comfort zones and challenging established patterns of interaction. Furthermore, we must consider the ecological congruence of our environment, our external surroundings, the people we spend time with, the information we consume, the activities we engage in, can either support or undermine our transformation. Consciously curating an environment that reflects and reinforces our recreated self is a powerful act of self-stewardship. This might involve setting new boundaries in relationships, seeking out communities that resonate with our values, or deliberately engaging with content that inspires and educates. It is also vital to acknowledge that the path of transformation is rarely linear. Setbacks, moments of doubt, and the resurgence of old patterns are not failures, but rather inevitable aspects of growth. We frame these instances as opportunities for deeper integration and refinement. When we stumble, the practice of self-compassion becomes paramount. Instead of self-recrimination, we meet ourselves with understanding, re-engage our awareness, and recommit to our chosen path. This resilient approach transforms potential derailments into valuable learning experiences, reinforcing the understanding that transformation is a continuous spiral of growth, not a direct ascent. The true test of recreation lies in its seamless integration into the minutiae of daily life. It is in the micro-moments of choice, the seemingly insignificant interactions, and the routine patterns that our new narratives are either solidified or eroded. everyday decisions become proving grounds for the recreated self. Do we respond to stress with old coping mechanisms, or do we consciously choose a new, more adaptive response? Do we succumb to external pressures for validation, or do we stand firm in our intrinsic worth? These small, consistent choices accumulate, gradually reshaping our internal landscape and our external reality. Our communication and relationships serve as particularly potent arenas for integration. As we begin to embody our transformed self, our ways of interacting with others naturally shift. We communicate with greater authenticity, clarity, and congruence. This often means navigating old relational patterns with new responses, setting boundaries that reflect our transformed values, and expressing our needs and desires from a place of empowered self-awareness rather than defensive reaction. This process can sometimes create relational dissonance, as those around us adjust to the new us. Patience, clear communication, and a steadfast commitment to our authentic self are essential during this period of recalibration. Beyond personal interactions, the recreated self profoundly impacts our work and sense of purpose. When we operate from a place of deeper alignment with our essential self, our vocation often transforms from a mere means to an end into a vehicle for meaningful contribution. We seek work that resonates with our core values, expressing our unique gifts and talents in ways that transcend external validation, finding fulfillment in the inherent worth of our contributions. This shift can lead to profound career changes or, more subtly, to a renewed sense of purpose and engagement within existing roles. To facilitate this integration, the conscious formation of new habits and daily rituals is incredibly powerful. These are not merely superficial routines, but sacred practices that continually reinforce our desired self. A morning meditation or journaling practice can ground us in our essential self before the demands of the day begin. Mindful movement can connect us to our body as a vessel for our transformed consciousness. Engaging in practices that cultivate gratitude, compassion, or presence throughout the day acts as a continuous affirmation of our recreated identity. These rituals serve as anchors, consistently drawing us back to our chosen path. Ultimately, the goal of self-transformation is to live in a state of authentic embodiment. This is a state where there is profound congruence between our inner beliefs, our outer actions, and our expressed emotions. We live in integrity, where our internal truth is mirrored in our external reality, eliminating the fragmentation and dissonance that characterize the untransformed ego self. This is not about achieving perfection, but about cultivating a deep sense of wholeness and coherence. The embodied, transformed self possesses remarkable resilience and adaptability. Having navigated the profound challenges of deconstruction and recreation, we develop an inner strength that allows us to meet life's inevitable changes and adversities with grace and inner stability. We are no longer rigidly bound by fixed narratives, but fluid and responsive, drawing upon the inherent wisdom and stability of the essential self. This allows for continuous growth, as we are better equipped to integrate new experiences and learn from challenges without being destabilized by them. This state of embodiment also brings about an expanded self-perception. The identification with the limited ego self recedes, giving way to a more expansive, interconnected understanding of our being. We recognize our place within a larger web of existence, experiencing a profound sense of belonging and interconnectedness. This shift often manifests as increased empathy, a deeper sense of universal compassion, and a desire to contribute to the well-being of the collective. Indeed, the impact of individual transformation extends far beyond the personal realm. When one person genuinely embodies their recreated self, living with authenticity and integrity, it creates a ripple effect. This lived example becomes an inspiration, a testament to the potential for human evolution. It fosters an environment where others feel empowered to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery and transformation, contributing to a collective elevation of consciousness. We recognize that this journey of embodiment is not a final destination, but a continuous unfolding. The quote 94 is always evolving, and the practices of awareness, integration, and embodiment are lifelong. We are not striving for a static state, but for a dynamic, ever-deepening alignment with our truest potential. The recreated self is not a fixed monument, but a living, breathing, continuously evolving expression of our inherent divinity. It is the conscious choice to live fully, authentically, and purposefully, moment by moment, day by day, contributing to the ongoing tapestry of human experience. Having explored the practicalities of sustaining and integrating our recreation, we now turn our attention to the deeper implications of this journey. What does it mean to connect not just with the recreated ego self, but with the essential self, the true core of our being? And how does this ultimate alignment manifest in a life of profound meaning and purpose? We will delve into these questions as we explore the deeper dimensions of self-realization. Having journeyed through the intricate landscapes of deconstruction, recreation, and embodiment, we arrive at a profound juncture, the living realization of the transformed self. Chapter 8 illuminated the culmination of this process in a state of profound congruence, where our inner beliefs, emotions, and external actions coalesce into a harmonious whole. This alignment, we observed, not only fortifies our resilience and expands our self-perception, but also initiates a ripple effect, extending positive influence beyond the individual sphere. Now, we delve deeper into the implications of this self-realization, exploring how it naturally unfolds into a life imbued with profound meaning, purpose, and an expanded sense of interconnectedness. The initial phases of transformation often center on the individual, on understanding and reshaping our personal narratives, liberating ourselves from limiting patterns. However, as the ego self progressively aligns with the essential self, the focus subtly yet powerfully shifts from self-improvement to self-realization, and from individual well-being to a more expansive sense of collective flourishing. This is not merely an outward projection of our inner state, but an intrinsic unfolding, a natural consequence of residing in authenticity. When the cacophony of the ego's demands and the anxieties of an unexamined life begin to subside, a new clarity emerges. This clarity is not merely the absence of confusion, it is the presence of an inherent, often deeply felt, sense of purpose. This purpose is rarely, quote 95 year in the external world, as one might discover a lost object. Rather, it emerges from within, a resonant frequency of the essential self. It is less about what we do, and more about how we are and why we are. We understand purpose here not as a singular, static career path or a grand, heroic mission, but as a guiding principle, an intrinsic motivation that informs our choices, actions, and very way of being in the world. It is the answer to the question, quote 96, quote, "For some, this manifests as a drive towards creative expression. For others, it is a commitment to service, to nurturing, to teaching, or to innovation. Regardless of its specific form, this inherent purpose is characterized by a deep sense of meaning, often accompanied by feelings of vitality, engagement, and a profound conviction that one is precisely where one needs to be, doing precisely what one is meant to do. This emergence is facilitated by the integration achieved in the embodiment phase, when our cognitive schemas, emotional responses, and behavioral patterns are in coherence. Our internal compass points unerringly towards what is genuinely meaningful. The internal friction that once dissipated our energy is replaced by a powerful, unified momentum. This allows us to perceive opportunities, recognize our unique strengths, and align our actions with a vision that transcends immediate gratification or external validation. The ego self, rather than dictating our path, becomes a willing instrument, serving the deeper impulses of the essential self. The quote 97 we touched upon in Chapter 8 is not a mere metaphor. It is a fundamental aspect of the interconnected nature of existence. As we cultivate congruence and align with our inherent purpose, our individual transformation inevitably extends its influence to our relationships, our communities, and indeed to the broader collective consciousness. This phenomenon is rooted in the understanding that the self is not an isolated entity, but an intricate node within a vast web of relationships, psychological, social, and even energetic. When we operate from a place of authenticity and alignment, our interactions become more genuine, more empathetic, and more compassionate. The need for defensive posturing, for manipulation, or for seeking external validation diminishes significantly. Instead, we approach others with an open heart and a clear mind, capable of seeing their essential self beyond their egoic expressions. This fosters deeper connections, builds trust, and creates environments where mutual growth and understanding can flourish. Consider the psychological impact of interacting with an individual who is deeply congruent and purpose-driven. Their presence often inspires, calms, and uplifts. They model a way of being that implicitly invites others to explore their own authenticity. This is not achieved through overt teaching or preaching, but through the energetic resonance of their transformed state. We become agents of positive change not by trying to change others, but by embodying the change we wish to see in the world. This interconnectedness also implies a heightened sense of social responsibility. When we recognize our essential self as part of a larger whole, the artificial boundaries between quote 98 quote and quote 99 quote begin to dissolve. Empathy deepens into compassion, and compassion naturally leads to a desire to contribute to the well-being of all. Our actions, guided by purpose and authenticity, become contributions to a collective evolution, reinforcing the idea that individual transformation is, in essence, a service to humanity. As the essential self takes precedence, the role of the ego undergoes a profound transformation. It is not annihilated, for the ego serves vital functions in navigating the physical world and maintaining a sense of individual identity. Rather, it is transcended. integrated into a larger, more expansive awareness. This ego transcendence manifests as a diminished attachment to personal outcomes, a reduced susceptibility to external praise or criticism, and a liberation from the constant need for validation. The ego becomes a finely tuned instrument, responsive to the directives of the deeper self, rather than a demanding master. One of the most compelling experiential manifestations of this ego transcendence, particularly when engaged in purposeful action, is the state of quote 100, quote coined by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Flow describes a state of optimal experience characterized by intense focus, complete absorption in an activity, a distortion of time and a merging of action and awareness. In flow, the self, or more precisely the ego self, temporarily disappears. We are so fully immersed in the task at hand that self-consciousness vanishes, and we become one with the activity. This state is not merely pleasurable, it is deeply enriching and inherently motivating. It is in these moments that we often perform at our peak, accessing creativity and insight that might otherwise remain dormant. Flow is a direct experiential window into the essential self operating unimpeded, fully present and aligned with its purpose. It represents a temporary but profound transcendence of the ego's usual anxieties and distractions, allowing for an effortless expression of our true capabilities. Regularly entering states of flow reinforces the neural pathways associated with purpose, presence, and essential self-expression, further solidifying the transformed identity. The journey of self-transformation, while often framed as a movement towards light and positive attributes, is incomplete without a courageous engagement with what Carl Jung termed the, quote, 101. The shadow encompasses those aspects of ourselves, thoughts, emotions, desires, and behaviors that we deem unacceptable, shameful, or contrary to our conscious self-image, and thus repress or deny. While earlier chapters focused on challenging limiting beliefs and narratives, a truly integrated and aligned self embraces all aspects of its being, including those previously disowned. Integration of the shadow is not about becoming, quote, 102, or eliminating our perceived flaws. On the contrary, it is about acknowledging, accepting, and ultimately integrating these disowned parts into our conscious awareness. When we suppress the shadow, its energy does not disappear. It often manifests in unconscious patterns, projections onto others, or self-sabotaging behaviors. For instance, a denied anger might surface as passive aggressiveness, or a repressed desire for power might manifest as a compulsive need to control. A transformed self, operating from a place of congruence and self-compassion, recognizes that these shadow aspects are not inherently, quote, 103, quote, but are often expressions of unmet needs, past wounds, or underdeveloped parts of our psyche. By bringing awareness to these aspects, without judgment, we can begin to understand their origins and reclaim the energy they hold. For example, the energy behind anger, when consciously integrated, can become a powerful force for setting boundaries or advocating for justice. The drive for power, when aligned with purpose, can fuel leadership and positive influence. This process requires immense courage and a deep commitment to radical self-acceptance. It expands our capacity for empathy as we come to understand the complexities and contradictions within ourselves. We naturally extend that understanding to others. the integration of the shadow leads to a profound sense of psychological wholeness, a robust and authentic self that is not brittle in its perfection, but resilient in its completeness. It is a testament to the fact that true transformation is not about eradicating parts of ourselves, but about embracing and harmonizing the entirety of our being. It is crucial to reiterate that self-realization is not a final destination, a static state of arrival. Rather, it is an ongoing dynamic process, an ever-unfolding spiral of deepening awareness, integration, and expression. The journey of transformation does not conclude with congruence. It begins a new phase of living from that congruence. Life continues to present challenges, new insights emerge, and our understanding of ourselves and the cosmos evolves. Each challenge, each moment of introspection, each interaction becomes an opportunity for further refinement and deeper alignment. We learn to approach these experiences not as obstacles to our transformation, but as catalysts for further growth. The practices of awareness, inquiry, and integration, once tools for initial transformation, become the very fabric of our awakened existence. In this continuous unfolding, we become increasingly attuned to moments of, quote, 104, quote, opportune, significant moments in time that offer profound insights or critical junctures for deeper transformation. These are not merely chronological moments, but qualitative ones, rich with potential for accelerated growth and expanded consciousness. As we move forward, we will explore the practical dimensions of sustaining this aligned self amidst the complexities of modern life, delving into the role of mindful practices, community, and the conscious creation of environments that nurture our continued evolution. We will also consider the ultimate implications of this journey for humanity, contemplating how individual self-realization contributes to a collective awakening and a more conscious future. The path ahead invites us to not only live our transformed selves, but to actively participate in the ongoing transformation of the world. Having navigated the profound terrain of self-recreation, integrating the shadow, and experiencing the initial efflorescence of purpose and interconnectedness, we arrive at a critical juncture, the art and science of sustaining this newly forged alignment. The journey of self-transformation, we have consistently posited, is not a linear progression towards a fixed endpoint, but rather a dynamic, unfolding process. If the prior stages focused on the arduous ascent and the exhilarating peak of insight, moments often characterized by a profound sense of clarity, liberation, and an almost ecstatic recognition of one's true nature, this phase addresses the ongoing stewardship of the inner landscape. It is the continuous, dedicated cultivation required to maintain the verdant growth of the essential self amidst the inevitable winds of life, which ceaselessly test our foundations and beckon us towards complacency or aggression. The initial breakthrough, however transformative, is merely the opening of a gate. The true mastery lies in navigating the path beyond it, ensuring the insights gained are not fleeting, but deeply woven into the fabric of daily existence. The question then arises with pressing immediacy: how do we anchor the transcendent experiences of ego transcendence and the profound congruence of the aligned self within the daily exigencies of modern existence? How do we prevent the subtle, insidious pull of old patterns, deeply ingrained societal pressures, or unforeseen challenges from dislodging us from this hard-won inner harmony? we discover that transformation is not a final destination, a static state achieved and then simply possessed like an object placed on a shelf. Instead, it is an active, ongoing engagement with the self and the world, a perpetual dance between inner knowing and outer manifestation. It is a continuous process of becoming, a perpetual refinement of our being, where each sunrise brings a fresh opportunity to recommit to our higher self, to deepen our roots and to expand our branches. This ongoing process, akin to a dynamic spiral, signifies that we revisit foundational principles: awareness, challenge, recreation, embodiment, but each time from a higher vantage point, with greater depth of understanding and enhanced capacity. Imagine ascending a mountain trail. Each loop brings you back to a similar vista, but the perspective is always broader, the details clearer, the air crisper. The aligned self, while integrated and whole, is not immutable. It is a living system, constantly interacting with its environment, requiring vigilant care and conscious adaptation. We are called to recognize that the ego, though now an instrument of the deeper self and no longer its sole master, retains its inherent patterns and can, under duress, stress, or even a moment of complacency, attempt to reassert its former dominion. It might whisper doubts, ignite old insecurities, or tempt us back into familiar comfort zones. The integration of the shadow, similarly, is not a one-time event, but an ongoing dialogue with the disowned aspects of our psyche, which may reveal new facets, nuances, or previously hidden layers as we grow and encounter new life experiences. This continuous engagement ensures that our transformation remains vibrant and responsive, rather than becoming rigid or stagnant. Sustaining alignment necessitates a deepened commitment to ongoing awareness. While initial mindfulness practices focused on observing the ego's machinations and deconstructing limiting beliefs, the aligned self employs awareness differently. Here, mindfulness becomes a finely tuned instrument for perceiving subtle shifts in our internal state, like a sensitive barometer registering atmospheric changes. It allows us to identify nascent egoic resurfacings before they gain momentum and solidify into habitual reactions, catching the first flicker of defensiveness or the faint murmur of self-doubt. Simultaneously, it serves as an antenna, attuning us to the nuanced guidance of our essential self, that quiet, intuitive wisdom that speaks not in demands but in gentle nudges and resonant truths. We cultivate an inner witness that observes not with harsh judgment, but with compassionate curiosity, noticing when old fears whisper their familiar anxieties, when comparison gnaws at our sense of worth, or when the urge to control rears its head in moments of uncertainty. This sustained vigilance is not a burden, but a profound liberation, as it allows us to consciously choose our response rather than react habitually, breaking free from conditioned patterns. It is the continuous calibration of the inner compass, ensuring our direction remains true to our deepest values and purpose, even when external currents attempt to pull us off course. Crucially, sustaining alignment also involves embracing imperfection and viewing perceived setbacks as integral to growth. The journey of transformation is rarely, if ever, a smooth, linear ascent. There will be moments of regression, periods where old habits reassert themselves with surprising force, or times when we feel unexpectedly disconnected from our essential self, as if a vital inner current has momentarily dimmed. These are not failures in the traditional sense, nor signs of insufficient effort. Rather, they are invaluable feedback mechanisms. They illuminate areas requiring further integration, reveal hidden pockets of unaddressed wounding that still yearn for attention, or signal a need for renewed commitment to our practices and self-care. It is precisely in these moments of apparent regression, when the path feels steepest or most obscured, that we find fertile ground for deeper learning and profound integration. Instead of succumbing to harsh self-criticism or despair, the aligned self approaches these experiences with a profound spirit of inquiry. Quote 105, quote, "This shift in perspective transforms obstacles into stepping stones, propelling us forward with greater wisdom." Self-compassion emerges as an indispensable cornerstone of this sustained journey. When old patterns resurface, when we stumble or fall short of our own ideals, the aligned self does not engage in harsh self-judgment. Such criticism only reinforces the ego's narrative of inadequacy and shame, deepening the very wounds we seek to heal. Instead, we extend to ourselves the same kindness, understanding, and unconditional acceptance we would instinctively offer to a dear friend facing similar struggles. This involves recognizing our shared humanity in moments of struggle, understanding that imperfection is not a flaw but an inherent aspect of the human experience, and responding to our own suffering with warmth, care, and a gentle presence. Self-compassion fosters a profound inner resilience, allowing us to acknowledge our pain and discomfort without being overwhelmed or consumed by it, to feel the sting of a setback without letting it define us. It empowers us to re-engage with our transformational practices from a place of support and inner strength, rather than self-flagellation or punitive self-talk. It is the gentle hand that guides us back to center, time and again whispering, "You are enough, even in your imperfections." The resilience and adaptability of the aligned self stem not from rigidity, but from this profound inner flexibility and self-acceptance. When confronted with external challenges, the profound sorrow of loss, the friction of interpersonal conflict, the gnawing uncertainty of global change, or the disheartening reality of systemic injustices, the aligned individual does not crumble or become paralyzed. Instead, they draw upon an inner reservoir of equanimity, wisdom, and self-trust that has been meticulously cultivated. Having integrated their shadow, they are less susceptible to external validation or condemnation, their sense of worth emanating from within rather than being contingent on others' opinions. Having cultivated congruence, their internal resources, their values, their intuition, their creative problem-solving abilities are readily available and coherent. They can navigate complexity with a clear mind, respond to adversity with creative, innovative solutions, and maintain their inner equilibrium even amidst profound external chaos. This is not an absence of emotion or a stoic suppression of feeling. Rather, it is a profound capacity to experience emotions fully, to allow grief, anger, or fear to flow through without being consumed by them, enabling them to inform rather than dictate action. It is the embodiment of anti-fragility, where challenges do not merely cause us to rebound to our previous state, but rather strengthen and deepen our integration, making us more robust and wise than before. Furthermore, sustaining the aligned self means actively engaging with the world from this place of wholeness and integrity. The inherent purpose that emerged during recreation is not meant to be held in isolation, a quiet internal flame. it naturally seeks expression, often manifesting as a profound desire to contribute, to serve others, or to co-create a more harmonious reality for all. This involves a conscious process of curating a supportive external environment, choosing relationships that uplift, inspire, and resonate with our authentic self, and engaging in activities that align deeply with our core values and highest aspirations. The aligned self understands that our inner state has a profound, undeniable ripple effect on our surroundings, extending far beyond our immediate perception. By consistently embodying congruence, compassion, and purpose in our daily interactions, we inadvertently inspire and positively influence those around us, fostering environments conducive to collective well-being, trust, and mutual growth. This isn't about grand gestures, but about the consistent, quiet power of being truly ourselves. This sustained alignment invariably extends beyond the personal realm, subtly yet powerfully impacting our relational dynamics. When we operate from a place of integrated wholeness, free from the constant need for egoic validation or defense, our interactions become inherently more authentic, empathetic, and constructively oriented. We are better equipped to listen without judgment, truly hearing the other person's perspective, even if it differs from our own. We learn to communicate with clarity and kindness, expressing our truths without aggression, and to resolve conflicts from a stance of mutual understanding and respect rather than from a position of egoic self-preservation or a desire to quote 107 quote. Our relationships transform from arenas of unfulfilled need and unconscious projection into sacred spaces of genuine connection, profound understanding, and creative co-creation, where each individual's unique essence is honored and celebrated. This outward manifestation of sustained inner work begins to lay the groundwork for what we might call collective awakening, a shared elevation of consciousness born from the cumulative effect of individual transformation, where personal alignment radiates outward, touching and uplifting the lives of many. As we continue our exploration in subsequent chapters, we will delve deeper into how this sustained individual alignment contributes to, and is supported by, a broader collective shift in human consciousness. We will examine the practical implications of living an aligned life in a complex, often challenging world, exploring how our personal transformation becomes a powerful catalyst for positive change on a larger societal scale. For now, we rest in the profound understanding that the journey of self-transformation, far from concluding with the emergence of the aligned self, truly begins its most profound and enduring phase, the conscious, compassionate, and continuous stewardship of our highest potential, day by day, moment by moment, spiraling ever deeper into the heart of our essential being. It is a commitment to perpetual growth, a promise to ourselves and to the world, to live in harmony with our deepest truth, to shine our unique light, and to contribute to the unfolding tapestry of a more conscious humanity. Having journeyed through the intricate landscapes of individual self-transformation, from the initial, often subtle, call to change that stirs the soul, through the challenging yet rewarding valleys of self-discovery, to the sustained congruence of an integrated self, we now turn our gaze outward. This profound work of personal metamorphosis, though deeply intimate and often feeling like a solitary pilgrimage, is never truly an isolated endeavour. It is rather a vital, luminous thread woven into the vast, intricate tapestry of collective human experience, enriching its patterns and strengthening its very weave. The awakened individual, having navigated the labyrinth of their own psyche, having confronted their inner shadows and embraced their authentic light, inevitably becomes a beacon, a catalyst, and an active participant in the broader, magnificent unfolding of human consciousness. Their internal revolution is in essence a quiet contribution to a larger evolution. We understand the self not as a solitary island, adrift and disconnected in the vast ocean of existence, but as an integral, dynamic node within an expansive, interconnected web of life. Just as a single, healthy cell contributes vibrantly to the health and optimal function of an entire complex organism, so too does each transformed individual contribute immeasurably to the vitality, resilience, and ongoing evolution of the collective. This fundamental principle resonates deeply across diverse ancient wisdom traditions, from indigenous spiritual teachings emphasizing kinship with all life, to Eastern philosophies of interconnectedness, and finds increasing corroboration in contemporary fields such as quantum physics, systems theory, and social psychology. The vibrations of our inner shifts, our moments of clarity, our acts of compassion, our radical acceptance of self, though often subtle and seemingly imperceptible to the naked eye, are profoundly potent. They ripple outward, affecting our immediate relationships with family and friends, influencing the dynamics within our communities, and ultimately, subtly yet powerfully, shaping the very fabric of global consciousness. To truly comprehend this pervasive and often underestimated phenomenon, we must first consider the concept of a collective consciousness. This is not merely the arithmetic sum total of individual minds, a simple aggregation of thoughts and feelings. Instead, it is an emergent property, a shared living field of awareness, beliefs, values, archetypal patterns, and historical memory that transcends individual psyches, yet profoundly influences and informs them. Carl Jung famously termed this the collective unconscious, a vast, deep reservoir of ancestral experiences, universal symbols, and primordial images that shapes our myths, informs our dreams, and underpins our cultural expressions across all civilizations. This collective matrix, much like the individual ego self, can harbour both brilliant light, manifesting as collective wisdom, innovation, and altruism, and profound shadow, perpetuating cycles of fear, conflict, ignorance, and stagnation that bind humanity. When an individual consciously undertakes the arduous yet ultimately liberating journey of self-transformation, dismantling limiting narratives that have held them captive, integrating shadow aspects of their personality that have been denied or repressed, and aligning with their essential, authentic self, they are not merely refining their personal operating system. They are in essence purifying and elevating a vital node within this immense, interconnected collective network. The compassion cultivated through self-forgiveness, the fear transmuted into courage and understanding, the wisdom gained through lived experience and deep reflection. These profound inner achievements do not remain solely within the individual sphere. They emanate, like a gentle, warming light, through countless daily interactions, through the subtle energetic resonances we share with those around us, and through the very quality of our presence in the world. This emanation subtly yet powerfully influences the overt and subtle dynamics of the collective, shifting the energetic landscape for all. Consider for a moment the profound and tangible impact of even a few transformed individuals on societal well-being. A person who has diligently integrated their shadow, for instance, exhibits greater psychological wholeness, authenticity, and emotional resilience. They are significantly less prone to projecting their unacknowledged fears, insecurities, or aggressions onto others, thus dramatically reducing interpersonal and intergroup conflict. Their capacity for empathy, honed and deepened through their own courageous journey of self-compassion and understanding, expands organically to embrace the diverse experiences and perspectives of others, fostering deeper connection, mutual respect, and genuine belonging. This heightened, expansive empathy is not just a personal virtue, it is a cornerstone for building more inclusive, equitable, and harmonious societies. It encourages active, non-judgmental listening, bridges seemingly insurmountable divides, and allows for the profound recognition of shared humanity even amidst the most profound differences in background, belief, or experience. Imagine a world where such empathy was the norm, not the exception. The possibilities for collective flourishing are boundless. Moreover, the alignment with inherent purpose, a hallmark of the embodied transformed self, frequently translates into actions that serve the greater good with unwavering dedication. Individuals who have discovered and committed to their unique contribution often channel their revitalized energy and newfound clarity into endeavors that uplift communities, advocate tirelessly for social justice, steward the environment with profound reverence, or innovate groundbreaking solutions to pressing global challenges. Their work is not driven by an egoic striving for personal recognition, external validation, or positional power, but by an authentic, unshakable desire to manifest their essential selves, unique gifts and talents in service to the interconnected whole. Such purpose-driven action, stemming from a place of deep inner congruence and integrity, possesses a potency that can inspire and mobilize others, creating positive ripple effects far beyond the individual's immediate sphere of influence. It's the quiet power of authenticity that stirs the souls of others. The transformative power also extends crucially to the breaking of deeply ingrained generational and societal cycles. Many collective patterns, such as systemic prejudice, deeply entrenched inequality, or insidious patterns of violence, are sustained by unexamined beliefs, inherited traumas passed down through generations, and collective cognitive distortions that have become invisible. An individual who consciously deconstructs these patterns within themselves, who chooses to respond differently to long-standing triggers that have historically perpetuated harm, who actively heals their own ancestral wounds through introspection and conscious choice, becomes a powerful disruptor. They demonstrate through their very being that alternative paths are not only possible but achievable, offering new narratives and new ways of being that can interrupt entrenched cycles of suffering within families, within organizations, and even within entire cultures. They become living proof that the past does not have to dictate the future. However, we must also acknowledge that collective transformation is not without its inherent challenges. The immense inertia of established systems, the deeply ingrained collective shadow that resists exposure, and the pervasive fear of the unknown often create significant resistance to change. Societies, much like individuals, develop their own ego structures, complex institutions, dominant ideologies, and deeply embedded cultural norms that provide a sense of identity, stability, and predictability, even if they are ultimately limiting, dysfunctional, or even harmful. To challenge these sacrosanct structures, to illuminate the collective shadow of unaddressed historical injustices or systemic biases, can be met with fierce opposition, defensiveness, and even outright hostility. The collective, fearing the loss of its familiar identity, its comforting narratives, and its perceived stability, may cling desperately to old ways and resist the uncomfortable truths that beckon towards necessary growth and evolution. The call for change can feel like an existential threat. Yet despite these resistances, the subtle and overt mechanisms for collective shift are continuously at play, working tirelessly beneath the surface. One powerful concept is that of a critical mass or tipping point. This theory suggests that once a certain percentage of individuals within a system adopt a new behavior, embrace a new belief, or embody a higher level of consciousness, the change can spread rapidly and spontaneously throughout the entire system, almost like a sudden phase transition. It implies that the diligent, often unseen work of individual transformation is not merely additive, it is profoundly catalytic. Each person who consciously embodies their essential self contributes to a rising energetic frequency within the collective field, making it exponentially easier for others to resonate with and adopt similar shifts in awareness and action. This phenomenon is akin to resonance, or entrainment, where the stronger, more coherent vibration of a transformed consciousness can subtly influence and elevate the surrounding collective field, bringing it into greater harmony. The emergence of new, empowering collective narratives is another crucial and dynamic element in this process. Just as individuals meticulously craft their personal narratives to define their identity, make sense of their experiences, and chart their future, societies construct grand collective stories that shape their understanding of history, their shared purpose, and their future potential. As more individuals awaken to universal principles of interconnectedness, profound compassion, and inherent worth, these fundamental values begin to infuse and reshape the dominant collective narratives. Stories of separation, fierce competition, and pervasive scarcity gradually yet inevitably give way to narratives of unity, collaboration, and abundant potential. These evolving stories, creatively disseminated through art, powerful media, progressive education, and shared transformative experiences, provide the essential conceptual framework necessary for a profound collective paradigm shift, guiding humanity towards a more conscious future. Ultimately, the journey of self-transformation, while deeply personal and uniquely experienced, is inextricably linked to the grander evolution of humanity itself. We are not merely transforming ourselves for ourselves, we are transforming ourselves for the collective, and indeed, as an integral part of the collective. The vision that emerges from this deeper understanding is one of a global community increasingly characterized by conscious awareness, profound empathy, and sustainable purpose. It is a world where individual well-being is recognized as fundamentally inseparable from collective well-being, where the timeless wisdom of the essential self guides our policies, inspires our technologies, and enriches our daily interactions. This is not a distant utopian fantasy, but a potential future actively being co-created, moment by moment, by every individual who chooses to embark upon and courageously sustain their own transformative journey, contributing their unique note to the grand symphony of human awakening. In the chapters that follow, we will delve into the practical implications and tangible manifestations of this collective unfolding. We will explore how these profound principles translate into conscious leadership across all sectors, the imaginative reimagining of societal structures to better serve humanity, and the intentional cultivation of environments that foster continued growth, innovation, and collective flourishing. The journey of self-transformation, we contend, is the most profound, impactful, and beautiful contribution any individual can make to the grand symphony of human evolution.